I mean, yeah, I was expecting something crazy, but this, I don't even know where to begin.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I looked at some of these pre-seeds and I said, make it make sense. Because it doesn't. You are locked on to Penn State Wrestling and the Big Ten tournament. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State Wrestling and Penn State Footballs. We're going to cover all of it. The pre-seed madness, we got to talk to Cael Sanderson today, and I didn't really get the chance to fully process the pre-seeds because as we were getting ready for media availability, they were being released and they are as hectic, if not more, than what we anticipated here. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Like I said, covering all of it. We're going to talk about each Penn State wrestler, their path through the Big Ten tournament, the major discrepancies here, and trying to make sense of why these guys are seated where they are. But let me start with the general thoughts here is that it is crazy. If you're Penn State, right, I want to provide the Penn State perspective. You're frustrated, right? Cael essentially blasted the preceding right in the middle, right at the beginning of his press conference. You can go watch that back if you haven't already. It's up on the YouTube page. And it's fully justified. I mean, he was critical of it. He said it is what it is, but there has to be a human element. So at least we're still doing better than artificial intelligence, right? The notable ones don't even, well, I guess the one has to do with Levi Haines. Levi Haines is the 2 seed. He defeated Christopher Minto, but apparently Christopher Minto has more of a right to the 1 seed than Levi Haines does. For Penn State, though, there weren't any questionable ones outside of Levi Haines being the 2 seed. It's everybody else. But why that's frustrating for Penn State is that you get the 1 seed or the 2 seed, you get a high up seed, and you're having a championship caliber match in the second round? PJ Duke's going to wrestle Brandon Cannon as a 2 versus 7 seed. Rocco Welsh is going to wrestle Angelo Ferrari as a 1 versus 8. Welsh is the number 1 seed. PJ Duke's the number 2 seed. Cannon's the 7 and Ferrari's the 8. And then it's just the mess of the seeding in other weight classes where they make absolutely no sense. I'll give you one here. Spencer Moore, he's wrestling in Illinois. He was previously at North Carolina. He's seated ahead of Nick Bazakis at number 2. Bazakis is 3. Okay, that's not the end of the world, but why is Spencer Moore the 2nd overall seed? And then we go back to Christopher Minto of Nebraska. Okay, it's one thing to be seated ahead of Levi Haines, but he also lost to Patrick Kennedy. He lost to Carson Harchla. And all of these guys are ranked below. He's the number 1 seed with losses to Levi Haines, Patrick Kennedy, Carson Harchla, and he's the top guy in that bracket. The whole idea, right? The whole idea of this, if we're trying to make sense of it, is that the Big Ten went third party to try to get a neutral seeding of the Big Ten tournament here. Okay, fine. And there was a formula to decide it and everything. And they weighted different categories, okay? Common opponents. And I imagine, I don't know all the logistics of it, but they basically gave a point system for all the different categories that you would have. And they went outside of it here. The bright side is that, let me continue with that before I get there, because this is not final, but we'll get to that in just a moment. I do want to stick with this. The idea is that you want people to wrestle in the Big Ten duels. I understand slightly penalizing people for missing Big Ten duels. It is supposed to be an incentive so that you wrestle throughout the season and you get credit, but that's really what this became about. It wasn't so much, it was overweighted how many matches you wrestled. For example, Christopher Minto wrestled a lot of Big Ten matches and wrestled a lot of opponents. But at some point in time, you have to say, okay, well, the quality of win matters, not the quantity. And that's where you have to throw in, okay, this is where the nuance comes in of, hey, Levi Haines is a 3-time defending Big Ten tournament champion. Okay? That's where you start to throw in some of those nuances. How far certain wrestlers made it to NCAAs a season ago, right? What kind of pedigree? Because guys are dealing with injuries. I get that. I understand it. You could debate Marcus Blaze versus Lucas Byrd. I absolutely believe that Lucas Byrd should get additional system points, or however you want to describe them, for being the defending Big Ten champion. If you're going strictly off of this season, though, hey, Marcus Blaze technically has the better resume. But Lucas Byrd is also the defending Big Ten champion. My biggest takeaways here are this needs to be changed. They need to sit down, and that's the bright side of it. So that's what I wanted to get to, is that these are not finalized. They can be adjusted, but don't expect any wholesale changes. Expect maybe some tweaks. So Levi Haines being the number 1 seed as opposed to Christopher Minto. I think if there's, if the margin, the way it was explained to me, if the margin of the points in this system, in this algorithm, if they are close enough, they can debate them. They will meet Friday. The coaches and administrators, whomever, will meet together and they will make those adjustments. But it's not going to be something where Angelo Ferrari is going to jump all the way up to the 3 seed, for example. It's not going to be something like that. It's going to be small tweaks like Levi Haines being the 1 seed, or Spencer Moore, for example, being below Nick Bazakis. That's Dean Peterson being the number 8 seed. So we're going to go through all the weight classes. I do want to give you where each Penn State wrestler is seated at this point in time before we continue. And it's going to stay that way except for Levi Haines. Luke Lilledahl's the 1 seed at 125. Marcus Blaze is the 1 seed at 133. Braden Davis is the 7 seed, and he's got a tough matchup there at 141 to open things up. 149, Shane Van Ness is the 1 seed. Like I said, the Penn State perspective, you're not really concerned about your seeding. At 157, PJ Duke is the 2 seed. At 165, Mitchell Messenbrink is the 1 seed. At 174, Haynes is the 2 seed, as we know. 184, Rocco Welsh is the 1 seed, as we've gone over. Josh Barr is the 1 seed at 197. And Cole Mirasola is the 4 seed at heavyweight. So the only discrepancy here for Penn State wrestlers is Levi Haines. Well, okay, and then we look at heavyweight. Let me glance at heavyweight again. Nick Feldman is the 3 seed ahead of Cole Mirasola. Mirasola should be the 3 seed. Okay, so now that we have that settled, that's where every Penn State wrestler is. Let's go through and share some initial thoughts on the paths for all these Penn State wrestlers over the next 2 segments. That is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. College basketball is nonstop. We're talking big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night, from early tip-offs to late-night West Coast games. There's always action on the board. Now, FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, and it can include rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your read. You can mix spreads, totals, player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. You can look at the odds right now and see which teams are trending. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, it's your style, now with more upside behind it. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com, FanDuel.com, FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. You got workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, your inbox is overflowing, and that one position you have to fill It's still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the right people who actually fit what you are looking for, whether that's skills, experience, maybe it's location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Do you need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Did you know you can get Locked On Nittany Lions ad-free? That's right, as a member of the all-new Everydayer Club. Plus, you will get access to a members-only Discord server to talk all things Penn State. That's the Everydayer Club. Visit LockedOnNittanyLions.supercast.com or check the link down in the show notes to learn more. Now, this is just the first reaction, so I'm going to go through these fairly quickly to get this into a relatively 30-minute podcast. We will have more in-depth analysis over the course of this week to preview it all. But just what stands out at each weight class. We'll go 125 through 157 and then 65 through heavyweight. Starting with Luke Lilledahl, we know he's the 1 seed. Spencer Moore of Illinois being the 2 seed. Just really interesting. That is not where I would have seeded him. Nick Bazakis would have been the 2 seed there. You have Bazakis as the 3 seed. Moran is the 4 seed. Jory Volk is the 5 seed. Hayden Smith is the 6th seed, Nicolas Rivera and Dean Peterson is the 7th and 8th seeds. Okay, so Luke Lilledahl, again, I'm going to explain the path. Luke Lilledahl could face either Dean Peterson, which was a matchup that we saw, went decisively in his favor, or he could go against Diego Sotelo, again, another matchup that went in his favor. But that is a tough matchup where Dean Peterson, I would have probably put him as the 3 or the 4 seed naturally. For me, it would have gone Lilledahl, Bazakis, and then Peterson. But he's going to be the 8th seed, and you're getting that in the quarterfinal. You're getting a Lilledahl versus Peterson rematch in the quarterfinal as opposed to the semifinal. That's the point that we've made over the past couple of shows here. And the question I wanted to ask Cael, which I did at the press conference, and he said, "Well, it is what it is. We're just we're just happy to wrestle, and it's a great way it's a great way for more practice." Is basically what he alluded to. We go to 133. Marcus Blaze is the 1 seed, Lucas Byrd the 2 seed. So this is monumental. And I imagine this will be challenged by the Illinois coaches, so we don't have the total points, or at least I don't have them. I'm going off of the Big Ten press release here. If Marcus Blaze and Lucas Byrd are in a certain margin, there is going to be a challenge, I imagine, by the Illinois coaching staff to get Byrd to be the 1 seed and Blaze to be the 2 seed. And if there's a case for it, it could happen. They could be flipped in theory. I don't know if it's going to happen, but in theory, if the margin is close enough, maybe they make a case and then they vote and Byrd is the 1 seed, Blaze is the 2 seed. That is massive, because it means you are either wrestling Ben Davino in the semifinal or in the championship. However, though, I am not going to look past the matchup with a rematch with Drake Ayala as the 5 seed or Zan Fugit from Wisconsin as the 4 seed. That's a toss-up in his own right. Ayala just hasn't had that great of a season. He's looking to have that get-back moment right now. So I'm never going to discount Drake Ayala. Just hasn't been his year. But Zan Fugit, that is a really tough matchup in the quarterfinal there. Either way, Blaze is going to get an elite competitor, but it's not going to be to the extent of Ben Davino. It's just a tough break for whomever it was. Blaze wrestled perfect this season. And then Lucas Byrd wrestled perfect in his own right this season. Truly not much separates those two at 133. Any of them. I mean, Ben Davino, it was a 3-2 tiebreaker, right? And Blaze, if it wasn't for the reversal, would have lost to Davino. That's how close those three are. But it's going to be very exciting to see potentially Blaze versus Byrd in that Big Ten title. Do not look past Zan Fugit or Drake Ayala. Blaze will most likely wrestle maybe Dylan Shaver again. He won a Big Ten title back in the day. It feels so long ago. Or Braxton Brown of Maryland in that quarterfinal matchup. Jesse Mendez is the 1 seed at 141. Braden Davis is the 7 seed, meaning that he's going to wrestle Joey Oliveri from Rutgers. This is another one that it's just, it doesn't make any sense. Make it make sense. This guy's undefeated. He has no losses. I know that he's missed a number of dual meets this year, but he's 15-0. And Oliveri, that is your first round matchup if you're Braden Davis. It's 7 versus 10. And Oliveri is the last guy that, because here's the difference. 1 seed, Dario Lemus of Maryland is 1 seed behind Oliveri. Oliveri's somebody that you meet in the semifinal if you're Davis. So 141 after Mendez and Brock Hardy, none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. But Braden Davis, I'm not surprised about him being the 7 seed. What I am surprised at is that Oliveri is the 10 seed, and this is not the matchup that he should be facing. Oliveri should be the 4 seed here in this instance. Nasir Bailey of Iowa is. So if Davis were, that's a tough matchup. I'm expecting better wrestling from Davis down the stretch, but this is a matchup that definitely could bounce him into consolations. If Davis does happen to move on, guess who he gets a rematch with? Brock Hardy. And up until the 3rd period, he was doing pretty well. So you avoid Mendez if you continue to win, which is good up until the championship round. So Braden Davis, you are in control of your own destiny here. Oliveri is beatable. Brock Hardy, up until you ran out of gas in the 3rd period, but Brock Hardy didn't look like this opponent that you had no chance of beating if you were Davis. So those are definitely 2 winnable matches there. Vance Von Bauer presents challenges in his own right if he makes it that far, right? But Davis could actually find himself in the title against Jesse Mendez. I don't look at any of these competitors and say, nope, Davis has no chance. Don't expect him to move on. No, they're difficult, they're challenging, but he can absolutely, now Jesse Mendez, that's kind of where I draw the line. That I don't know if Davis can upset Mendez, but if his conditioning is peaking the way that Cael Sanderson is alluding, then Davis absolutely is in total control of his Big Ten tournament path. 149, Shane Van Ness, number 1 seed. This is where it gets questionable. So Ethan Styles missed a few dual meets down the stretch. He's the 2 seed. So I'm not exactly sure. It's consistent in some places. It's not consistent in others. But I guess when you look at this 149-pound weight class, there really aren't a lot of other wrestlers that I say, okay, he's definitively better, or he had a much better resume. Joseph Zargo of Wisconsin is the 3 seed. Lachlan McNeil of Michigan's the 4 seed. So Shane Van Ness could wrestle potentially Ryder Block, get a rematch there, wrestler from Iowa as that 8 seed, and then ultimately meet Lachlan McNeil again, Michigan wrestler in the semifinals, hopefully setting up for a championship bout against Ethan Styles of Ohio State. That one seems to be the most likely outcome of all the weight classes across the board. 157, hey, Antrell Taylor versus PJ Duke in the Big Ten title. It's not going to be easy to get there if you're Duke. You are going to have to potentially go through Brandon Cannon, who was the number 1 wrestler at 157 until he got hurt, and he still was as a placeholder, though. He's now the 7th seed. So you're going to have to wrestle Brandon Cannon, Cannon Webster, who upset Shane Van Ness a year ago at 149, and then Antrell Taylor. Let me just say this for PJ Duke. He is going to have to earn that Big Ten title if and when he gets it, because that is quite the path to hold that gold medal at 157 pounds. But it's the outlier is Brandon Cannon. Cannon should not be a number 7 seed here. He should, I would say he's the 3 seed. So essentially you move him into that theoretical semifinals matchup. But Cannon Webster's had a really good season. You move Cannon Webster to the 4 seed. I suppose we don't get a rematch with Cam Catrabone from Michigan unless he upsets Antrell Taylor. I'm expecting Duke to win these matchups. It's just going to be very exciting right out of the gate against Brandon Cannon, and then you follow it up with Cannon Webster. So PJ Duke's the 2 seed at 157. We'll continue along 165 all the way up to heavyweight and break down the paths further with Mitchell Messenbrink, Levi Haines, Rocco Welsh, Josh Barr, and Cole Mirasola. That is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Same thing, we're going to talk about the paths here for each Penn State wrestler. So we pick back up at 165. Mitchell Messenbrink's the 1 seed. Mikey Caliendo's the 2 seed over Joey Blaze. That's the questionable one, and I do wonder if that is challenged. Now, how much of a difference does it make, right? That's going to be the idea. Well, he's the 2 seed versus the 3 seed. They're going to meet each other in the semifinal, right? It's about the matchups beforehand that you're going to get into. So if you're Joey Blaze, the difference between LJ Arujo, for example, this is just an example. Mikey Caliendo's facing Barbosa in theory in that quarterfinal from Rutgers versus rather than wrestling a Braden Scholes from Illinois as the 6 seed, right? You want the top seed to be justified. Right now, it feels like the 1 seeds are being penalized as opposed to the top seeds are being penalized more so than they're being rewarded. You're supposed to get the competition to ramp up as the tournament goes on, not an absolute juggernaut right out of the gate. So this is why the pre-seeds are an issue, which we addressed in segment 1 here. For Messenbrink, that doesn't matter. He's the favorite in this one. It does set up what really would have been interesting is if somehow Mikey Caliendo or Joey Blaze were the 4 seed or the 5 seed in this instance. So Messenbrink's going to meet either one of them. I'm hoping for Joey Blaze because that is a different matchup. I want to see Joey Blaze and not Messenbrink versus Caliendo part 8. Maybe we get that in NCAAs. I want to see Joey Blaze, Marcus Blaze's older brother, wrestle Mitchell Messenbrink because it's a different kind of matchup and he poses different types of challenges, even though I still think Messenbrink wins that one. 174. Okay, this one will be corrected. I am confident that this one's going to get fixed because nobody sat back and said, got it right. That one is spot on. No change necessary. Everybody was in lockstep with one another about how Levi Haines needs to be the number 1 seed. So Haynes eventually will be the 1 seed because they can adjust these. They can make adjustments. They're not going to make crazy changes, but they're going to make adjustments. Haynes will eventually be the 1 seed, which changes things. So I'm going to go off of that assumption. I'll give you the quick path. If Haynes were to stay the 2 seed for whatever reason, he would most likely wrestle Ethan Riddle of Minnesota as a 7 seed, or maybe Lenny Pinto. I'd probably take Pinto in that matchup. From Rutgers, he'd be the 10 seed, so 10 seed beats the 7 seed, wrestling Levi Haines. So Haynes and Pinto have met in the past. Haynes decisive wins over Pinto in the past, so he'll move on. But instead of, you would wrestle Patrick Kennedy as the 3 seed from Iowa. That would be a good matchup. That would be a matchup that I'd really want to see go down, but in the championship, in the Big Ten title matchup. So at 174, if we're assuming now that Haynes is the 1 seed, he would get a rematch with Bo Mantanona in the quarterfinal and would most likely wrestle Brody Bauman of Purdue in the quarterfinal. So just some differences there. Again, Lenny Pinto is a 10 seed. That's crazy to me. I've seen Lenny Pinto wrestle a ton since he was from the state of Pennsylvania when I covered high school wrestling a lot back in the day. So Pinto is a 10 seed. Naturally, I'm going to scratch my head, but Haynes as the 1 seed, that is a good spot to be at. Or you're probably going to get Carson Harchla, if I'm being honest. Bo Mantanona, that's not a guarantee in the semifinal. You could have Carson Harchla, who's the 5 seed, which I would want to see more since we saw Haynes absolutely dominate Mantanona in that Michigan dual meet. I want to see Haynes versus Harchla, a rematch from last season that was the difference of a takedown. And it came late in the third period. Haynes was not leading. I want to see how much Haynes has widened the gap since the last time that he met Carson Harchla. 184, Rocco Welsh. Welsh against Angelo Ferrari, 1 versus 8 in the quarterfinal. Here's something that maybe I should have said earlier on, but this is a good time to bring this up now. There's a chance that this matchup does not happen. If Angelo Ferrari assumes that he's going to get an auto qualification, he's going to get one of the auto bids into, and I hope I'm saying that right. If he's going to get one of the bids to get into the NCAA tournament, then he might not wrestle this match. If he's not 100% and Brands and Iowa don't think that it's worth the risk. Remember, Carter Staracci opted out of the Big Ten tournament and then took the bid and got the 9 seed into the NCAA tournament back when his leg was really messed up and he still won an NCAA title. If Ferrari is not good to go, he's probably going to walk out onto the mat, forfeit, and then he might even forfeit his first match against Sam Goen of Indiana. So we very well might not even see Rocco Welsh versus Angelo Ferrari if that is the case, where Ferrari just goes out and forfeits the match and then he's automatically in consolations and then he doesn't wrestle at all. It could be Welsh versus Goen if Ferrari's going to do that. But we are all hoping that Welsh is going to face Ferrari at some point. Ideally in a semifinal or a championship, but 1 round earlier, sure, why not? Max McAnally's the 2 seed. That one is correct. But if Welsh, this is the path I'm anticipating with no discrepancies, no what ifs. Rocco Welsh versus Angelo Ferrari. Ferrari is much better than Sam Goen. 100%, 75%, he's better than Goen. Welsh versus Ferrari, and then if Welsh moves on and wins, he would face either probably Brock Mantanona. I think Mantanona would beat Chris Moore of Illinois as the 4 versus 5 seed matchup. You would beat Brock Mantanona again, and then you get Max McAnally in the Big Ten championship. And we are going to learn a ton about Rocco Welsh seeing that path, because you get a rematch with Ferrari. You eventually get to Max McAnally. We're going to know definitively who is the best wrestler at 184 if Welsh is able to defeat these opponents. If he doesn't, then 184 gets more complex. 197, I already talked about it, my first reaction, first preview. Nobody's challenging Josh Barr at 197 at Big Tens. You got to wait till the NCAA tournament. Josh Barr's the 1 seed. Camden McDaniel's the 2 seed of Nebraska. Remy Cotton's the 3 seed of Rutgers. Branson John's the 4 seed from Maryland. The most likely path for Josh Barr is he would wrestle Gabe Sollers, a rematch from the Indiana duel. He would win that one. He'd either get Luke Geog of Ohio State or Branson John in that semifinal. That's a toss-up. I imagine Luke Geog. I think he's better, but Branson John's the 4 seed, so he could easily win that one. And then a rematch with Camden McDaniel, which will go in favor of Josh Barr. So this is, like I said before, he was injured at last year's Big Ten tournament. This is about just kind of going through the process, going through the Big Ten tournament. No injury scares, no nothing. And I know it's all circumstantial. Just make it through the tournament. This is one that you are in total control of, and then get amped up for NCAAs. Then in heavyweight. Okay, so this is random, right? You are basically pulling numbers out of a bingo machine. Tay Gadali, AJ Ferrari, Nick Feldman, Cole Mirasola, and honestly, I will throw in Braxton Amos. And I haven't seen a ton of Luke Luffman this year, but Ben Keeter, any of these guys are contending for a Big Ten title. The margin of error between these wrestlers is razor thin. And that top 5, if you told me your prediction said, hey, I think Ferrari's going to win, you're probably not wrong. Gadali, you think he's going to win, you're probably not wrong. Cole Mirasola, though, has the exact same chance as these other wrestlers. Well, he lost to Gadali. He lost to Ferrari by just a point, by just a couple of points. He beat Nick Feldman. He beat Ben Keeter. Okay, so the champion you're thinking, it could be any of them, really. All of them have an equal chance here. But to go through the path for Cole Mirasola, his path would be, okay, you're going to wrestle either one of the, I think I have this right. I want to make sure that I have this right. You will get one of the 12 or the 12 or 13 seed between Joey Schneck of Maryland or Gabe Christensen of Northwestern. Mirasola wins that one. Braxton Amos in the quarterfinal. That's one I really want to see because he hasn't wrestled Amos, and Amos is really talented in his own right. Toss up. Mirasola could be in consolations, or he's moving on to the semifinal. Then, in theory, he would get a rematch with Tay Gadali. I don't see anybody that's knocking Gadali out early. Mirasola could absolutely turn that one around and win that rematch against Gadali, and then he'd get either Ferrari or Nick Feldman from the other side of the bracket, unless there's a crazy upset there. I'm not going to discount Luke Luffman. I think Luffman's, they've wrestled before. Mirasola and Luffman wrestled in that Penn State Illinois dual meet last year. So I'm not going to write off Luke Luffman by any stretch, but I do think Ferrari and Feldman are better. So Mirasola, while he has just as good of a chance as anybody else to win the Big Ten title here, he also has just as good of a chance to lose and get knocked down into consolations and would have to wrestle back. So that's the way the pre-seeds look early on here. We'll see some adjustments, nothing totally radical though. That's just the nature of it. They're going to make some changes with how close the margins are in the scoring. But other than that, if you think Ferrari's questionable or Dean Peterson, it's probably going to stay that way, where they're around a 7th or an 8th seed. They're not going to jump all the way up to a 3 or a 4 seed, something like that. But yeah, those are the pre-seeds there. Penn State wrestlers, for the most part, unaffected, but it's going to create championship caliber matchups earlier than it should be. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of Locked On Nittany Lions. As always, thank you so much for joining me here on this episode. Friendly reminder to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. If you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around Penn State wrestling and all of your favorite Penn State sports teams.